My name's Kevin Graham and welcome to the studio-based Screamacelica. We were out of our brain on the live stream for a wee while there, but now they've plonked me on a scooter and it's going to be studio-based. It's a bit different. We're going to have guests in to talk about their journey, their Celtic games, but they're not just all Celtic fans. Today we're joined by a Dundee United fan, but today we're actually going to go from 1990 to Naughty. So it's a whole decade of fun for Screamacelica today. My guest today is author, general good lad, Johnny Proctor. Johnny, how are you getting on?
Good afternoon. I'm all good, mate. Pleased to meet you.
It's great to have you into the studio. We've been trying to get this done for a wee while. Now the COVID thing's lifting, we can actually do it. Eh? What do you think of this Aladdin's cave of memorabilia?
Last podcast I done, and I had a great time doing it. I was in a cave below the streets of Dundee, and I feel like I'm in a museum this time around. I mean, it's like, polar opposite. Mm-hmm. I'm already got my eye on a few pieces that can't be mine, but I'm going to dream. We may have to fight each other for the one through.
Aye, for the Adidas stop out there. Aye. We'll need to check you on the way out.
Winner gets a
check your pockets on the way out.
You're no joking, mate.
You did actually mention there you're a Dundee United fan, and we didn't have any Dundee United stuff. We've got nearly every other team in the Scottish Premier League, but we don't seem to have any Dundee United stuff. So if anybody wants to send us anything whatsoever of Dundee United, we will put it in.
Aye.
We'll get it in.
I'll get this to the troops. Somebody's going to have some fun. Everything I end up destroying the last top I put in the dryer, and I've obviously just blew the sponsor in the back, so you can't wear it anymore. So I'll put the call out. Aye,
definitely. Now, as I says, we're going from 90 to Naughty, and we're going to have a look at. You've got your Zico trilogy that you've written.
Yeah.
So it begins in 1990. The next book's 96. Then the final book of the trilogy is Naughty. So what we've actually done is we've picked 3 games from each of those years. First one to start with is the 13th of January 1990, the first game of the new decade. Celtic travel to Tannadice, and it's a massive decade when you actually look back at it now. The amount of things that shaped the world that we currently live in that happened in that decade is unbelievable.
I mean, the day that game against Celtic started the decade, you couldn't have imagined what the next 10 years was going to be filled by. You were at the very start of it. And it was good that we got off to a win.
Yes, aye. Well, I thought since you were the first guest, I says we'll give you a win to start off with. I mean, Dundee United are still a force at this point. I mean, for me and you growing up in the 80s, Dundee United were the Jim McLean Dundee United. You're only 3 years since you were in the UEFA Cup final at this point, and the majority, there's still some of this team that day that played in that UEFA Cup. I mean, the Dundee United team that day was Alan Main, Van der Hoorn, Malpass, McInally, Karopovic, if I've said that wrong, Dave Neary, who was signed with Dundee United in 1973. Which is really still quite blows my mind. John Clark, Kevin Gallagher, Darren Jackson, Paddy Connolly and Mixu Patalainen.
Aye, I mean, there's players there.
There is. For somebody like me, growing up in the 80s, if somebody says, name a Dundee United team, there's a lot of names in there, I'll go, that's a Dundee United team that I actually remember.
Aye.
Going to Tannadice for Celtic, there's a stat in this, I don't know if you ken this stat, Celtic, when they turned up to Tannadice this day, had only won twice in their last 17 visits to Tannadice.
Didn't know that.
That shows you the power of Dundee United at that point.
To be fair, now that you mention it, it's me being a young Arab starting to go. Losing to Celtic at Tannadice, you're right. Losing to Celtic at Tannadice wasn't a thing. To be fair, losing at Tannadice to anybody was generally not a thing either, because we were so good back then. But well, considering we're living in this age where, need that you're aware, if you're a stats man, that we've no won at Parkhead since 1992. So
When I saw that stat, I went, that's unbelievable. If you say to the younger generation now, they would go, nah, you're talking rubbish.
Aye.
You go, no, we're not talking rubbish. I went to my first game in 1981, and growing up during the 80s and going to watch Celtic, mainly at home at Celtic Park during the 80s, I can hardly ever remember us beating Dundee United. I can always remember Dundee United coming to Celtic Park and getting a 1-0 victory.
Yeah.
One of my earliest memories of going to Celtic Park is Dundee United beating us. And whoever scored, I really wanted the person to score. In my mind, the guy that scored was always Davy Dodds. But I've checked back the records, and it couldn't have been Davy Dodds.
Him.
But whoever scored jumped to advertising boards, ran past the wee disabled cars,
the blue cars,
the wee blue cars, to the pocket of Dundee United fans in the away
Right.
end. And I can, if I shut my eyes, I can picture that clearly.
Was that a midweek game? Or
I can't actually remember. My memory.
When the games are that old, I'm the same as you. It's like I vaguely, but even then, if it was before '83, chances are I maybe never seen it. But I mean, the one I'll always remember vaguely is the 3-2 midweek game that literally won us the league. If, you know, everything changed if you beat us that night, but you didn't. I think we got a guy sent off and we beat you 3-2, and then it just set us up to.
It set us up for the league title in 1980,
but
1983.
I do believe we wouldn't have won the league if we'd got beat that night.
You look at that early period where you've got Alex Ferguson at Aberdeen, Jim McLean at Dundee United, Billy McNeil at Celtic. I mean, they're a big three, and at this point Rangers are no mentioned.
No.
Because Rangers are no a force, or they're no a force until Souness arrives and pours their money into Scottish football and completely kills the game. Completely kills the Scottish game. It wasn't a revolution, it was a bludgeoning to death of Scottish football.
When I first started following Scottish football, I mean, clearly it's made out that Rangers are a big team. You can see it all over the papers, but it's a 7-year-old kid, and everyone's mere black and white basic, and you look at the table and you look at the fact your team beat them 5-2 the last time, and I'm like, I couldn't quite understand until that first day at Tannadice when Souness had arrived and suddenly the away end that couldn't be filled had changed from filled, and then Rangers fans and your end as well, and it was like, what's going on here?
I always laugh now when I hear a certain generation of Rangers fans saying natural order has been restored, and I'm going, well, when I was growing up in the 80s, natural order was used finishing fifth. That was natural order.
But yeah, you're right, guys like Ferguson and Jim McLean, I mean, I think Rangers may have tried to get both. They definitely tried to get McLean, and I mean, I think he came that close.
He did.
To go in it. Literally, didn't he turn up for the match on the Saturday? We gave it to the caretaker whilst he just got his head together and.
It's a parallel universe one. That what would have happened?
Sliding doors
if Jim McLean would have ended up at Ibrox.
You know, I would have loved to have seen him go to England, like Fergie, and just see how it went, because you know how it worked out for Fergie, and I believe those two managers were. They were basically their nemesis, is it?
Definitely.
You know, you could argue they were like on an equal level, and Fergie went on to become one of the best managers we've ever seen.
Definitely.
And, Jim McLean just stayed loyal, but to the detriment of his career, possibly. Yeah, but you know, you never know.
It's a shame. I mean, we'll move on, but it's a shame that everybody of a younger generation only seems to remember Jim McLean for the YouTube clip, like when he punches the reporter.
Aye.
And again, for me, that's like the Brian Clough clip. If you grew up in the when he's hitting the guy, when he's hitting the fans on the park, you go, that wasn't Brian Clough. Then you're a writer yourself, I'm a bit of a creative myself, then you've got the ones that believe the Damned United is true to fact, and you go, no, it's a fictional tale of a reality thing, but it's fictional. That is no Brian Clough.
Exactly, yeah. But when you see the actual footage, that's all you can go by. I feel bittersweet about that for McLean, because I didn't want that to be the thing people would remember him from. But at the same time, I thought it was brilliant what he did as well. Like, I'm only going to lie. Yeah.
There there seems to be the two things that keep on get brung up about Jim McLean is 25-year contracts and £17 a week and punching the reporter, eh?
Everything.
And you go, that's not how Jim McLean should be actually remembered. That's not at all.
I think you speak to any of those players that played under him. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but we've just unveiled a bronze statue at Tannadice of him. It's been in the works for a while. It got launched the day before the derby. And given it its due, it's actually a bronze statue that looks like the person. You know, like
brilliant.
It's not like a Ronaldo one at the Madeira airport or anything, but it looks good. And he's holding the league trophy. And like, you know, you ask all those guys how, if it wasn't for him, you know, their career wouldn't have been what it was.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to getting back to Tannadice again. It's one of our favourite away days, and which it seems bizarre. Obviously, Tannadice and Dens is on the same street. You can get a ticket for Dens, no problem. Trying to get a ticket for Tannadice as an away fan is completely... We go to the same pubs, we do everything the exact same, but Tannadice actually just seems more... Trying to get a ticket for the Shed at Tannadice in the away end is unbelievable.
I've heard that for you, I've heard it for Aberdeen fans, Hearts fans. Me personally, I've been in the Shed once in the past 20 years for a cup game. I suppose you guys aren't sitting down anyway, are you?
No, we're not.
You're standing the whole time.
No, we're not.
Which is fine because you can't sit down in the Shed because
you can't sit
it's
down
like an EasyJet flight or something.
You can't sit down in the Jerry Care either.
But no, I hear it a lot. It's like you're saying, it's a good amount of pubs. You can walk to the ground for the train station, for the pubs. It's a lot of people do tend to miss it.
It was one of the way days that we missed. When you did get relegated, it was going, oh no, we've lost Tannadice. Oh no, we've still got to go to Dingwall.
A lot of people think that same way. You see on Twitter, you know, like a lot of people wanted, in the disrespect to the teams, a lot of people wanted Kilmarnock gone because they didn't consider it a good away trip. You know, it's just Hearts and Aberdeen, which you can understand.
Hamilton as well. Hamilton wasn't a good away trip either. It was like walking through that.
I'm still pinching myself. Hamilton got relegated, to be honest.
You're like cockroaches in an atomic war, eh? They would survive.
It's like just to spite everybody that would stay up.
And now they're even struggling in the first division.
Is that right?
So it's bizarre.
But that wasn't a good away trip.
No, it wasn't. I mean, walking through that multi-storey car park to actually get to the way end was utterly bizarre. Sure. For the younger guys who watch this podcast, I'm going to read. I mean, this game, Celtic will beat 2-0 with 2 goals by Paddy Connolly, who was a United hope at this point, and he's probably more famous for the phantom goal against Partick Thistle, where I can't even remember the referee's name. Didn't give it.
Les Mottram.
Les Mottram.
I'll tell you, don't worry.
So Paddy Connolly scores 2 goals. He's 19 at this point. He scores 2 goals in the 36th and the 44th minute. The attendance at Tannadice that day was 16,635. That's a phenomenal attendance as well. When you look at it's only Hibs and Hearts can get any Hearts and Aberdeen can get anywhere near that.
Aye, I mean we're personally now and when you see the capacity of a stadium, exactly that means that it's not going to be that on the day for whatever reason, segregation. I think your best is 14.5 now. You know, if we've got like an away team that's going to fill the bit as well, or like the derby last week, the derby a couple of weeks ago. It's like we've now taken away the Shed from Dundee. I think it's going to be permanent now. It's one of those, like, if we can fill it, why are we giving it to you? I mean, you can moan about it, but you look after your own club. But even then, it's 16. Wow. I think when I first started going, I think technically it was meant to be about 21,000, and it was always the record was 28 against Barcelona the first time round. By 16,000.
But before I bring up the Jim McLean quote, I want to talk about when he speaks about Paddy Connolly and his lack of fitness. Why did Dundee United change ends? Because in the early 90s, at this point, yous have got the Shed. Yous are standing in the Shed. The Shed is the Dundee United end.
Aye. I mean, it's a good point, that, actually, because I've noticed, I don't know, maybe something's changed past couple of years and it's no longer like a guarantee that we get that now. So, I mean, I personally can't remember. I mean, if we won the toss that day and chose not to do it. I mean, I don't know if it was the sun or whatever. I'm struggling to recall, but you're right. Traditionally, we're shooting down the way, yeah. And so, why would you know? What I always didn't understand was it's not like this slope was just suddenly discovered. It was known about for years.
Aye.
And I'm not believing that we won the toss every single time at Tannadice. So it's just always seemed to be an unwritten rule that unless the sun was bad, because I've seen a few times, you got to look after yourself. Aye, whatever happened, you kicked down the way second half. And me personally, I've always sat, since the new east stand went up, that's where I sat. So obviously,
but was there any kickback when that east stand was built? And the home end knew it was opposite for the shed.
What happened was when it was almost nearing completion, there was an issue here because it's so we've got the shed, but the away fans are going to get this brand spanking new end.
Is that what the issue was?
And it was so they gave the United fans the choice. I can't remember how the vote went. Obviously, this was before the internet, so you couldn't do it online or that. But I think you had to fill something in, and basically, I think the majority must have said, "No, give us the new one. Put the away fans up there." So quite a hard one for fans to give up their
definitely
territorial.
Aye. For something brand new and shiny, and
I've always said we'll never ever do it, but I would always love to see United build another East Stand.
At the shed end,
and that would just round that ground up perfectly.
Perfect.
But but that's I'm not sure what we're going back a while, but I'm not sure what the stats were who wanted to stay. Because you know for a fact there have been some United fans saying, "No, stay in the shed."
Stay in the shed, traditionalists. I would have voted to stay in the shed. And give the away fans a shiny new thing. We want tradition.
I'm not really one of the ones that worries about comfort at a football stadium once the game kicks off.
Aye.
You hear a bit like Italian fans that stay away, like the Juve that would never go to this Dalle Alpi because they didn't like the stadium. But it's a football team you're going to see.
Aye, I know. Jim McLean, Paddy Connolly scores the 2 goals in this game, and Jim McLean says after the game, Connolly lacks belief in his own fitness. Paul Sturrock has been taking him for 20-minute cross-country runs because he had glandular fever. We were a bit soft with him, but really it was just because he was lazy. Now his attitude is much better.
And he said that after.
He says that after a 19-year-old Paddy Connolly scored two goals against Celtic. So he basically calls the player lazy and knew he's got a better attitude.
Aye, that's pretty much as much a compliment I think you could have got for wee Jim.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember the one. I think it was Motherwell, and we were beating them 5-0 at half time.
Mm-hmm.
Tannadice, maybe 5-1, and he fined the players. He fined the players because they never went and scored any more in the second half. It's maybe like a wee urban myth or something, but it's Jim McLean. Aye. I believe it. You tell me anything about Jim McLean and I'm believing it.
Nah, we went. Well, this was actually a quote from a report by Kevin McCarra. So I'm virtually sure that Jim McLean did actually say this.
Quite official, aye.
The viewers will probably wondering why I've picked a defeat for Celtic to start off with. But this is a massive game in Celtic's history as well. And I'm wondering if you can maybe guess if I say to you, Roy Aitken had recently left to go to Newcastle. So this was somebody's first game as captain for Celtic.
Stepping up. And that's, I mean, it's big boots to fill, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. The player that stepped in was Paul McStay. This is Paul McStay's first game.
What age was McStay? Sort of would have been back then.
He would have been 26 maybe at that point. So this was his first game as captain.
Imagine that.
It's a big moment for Celtic fans, even though football's about to change at this point. The English Premier League's about to start. Celtic are about to go into a period of downhill, which McStay's captaincy is always remembered by. But the fact is, this was Paul McStay's first game as Celtic captain.
I never knew that. So Aitken moved in the summer.
Aitken moved in the winter. He moved to Newcastle, I think, November or December.
It was January game, wasn't it? And how did McStay these are the Celtic guys. Did McStay just keep the captaincy from
yes.
when it was awarded?
He was a club captain until he retired in 1997.
He was Celtic.
He was Celtic through and through.
Celtic through and through, yeah. So
he's one of these players. He talked to guys, football legends. Quite recently, Rio Ferdinand's been talking about him, and anybody that played at that era, you ask him, who's the best player you played with or the best player you played against, and virtually every one of them, man will say Paul McStay. We recently spoke to Mike Galloway, and who's Scotland top is behind me there, and he went like that. He says McStay could have played anywhere in the world. He was that good at that time. He says you were coming in to the dressing room and that, and Inter Milan wanted him, Juve wanted him, Serie A was the biggest league at the world at this point, and they all wanted him. There was the big teams wanted them to go to Italy. So this is an important moment for us Celtic fans when we actually look back, even though it ended up in a defeat.
Aye. Do you think the captaincy was a party trying to keep him? You know, like if these teams are getting linked and just a wee extra, because I appreciate the status of being a Celtic captain. You know, I
think it was maybe something he was always destined to be, Johnny.
Aye.
I think it was always just a destiny. The McStay family name linked with Celtic, that he was always going to be the captain. And the thing is, he was that good. But when you look at the Celtic team that day, and I'll just quickly read it out, you've got Bonner, Morris, Dovcek, Galloway, Elliott, White, Maffey, McStay, Jakanowski, Fulton and Muller. There's no many captains there apart from Elliott and McStay.
Well, Paul Elliott would be a good shout, yeah, because he was a player as well.
There's no many captains there, so there were slim pickings, but I think that me saying it's slim pickings is actually Dane McStay a disservice.
Of course, he was. You know how it works. When you support another team, you only see somebody like Paul McStay. And let's remember, there was no many live games in those days.
Aye.
You literally seen him in the flesh when you went to Parkhead, Tannadice. My opinion, Mr. Consistency. He never ever seemed to drop a level. You know,
Aye.
It's just like, and one of those guys. It probably was a good idea for a captain because I'm now thinking back, some urging the guys around him to kick on, and we had a wee mini version with Barry Robson. He was like when he was with us.
We love like, Barry Robson as well. Barry Robson.
Can't even love Barry Robson.
Always have a place in our hearts as Barry Robson.
Gave them to use and you won the league. Yeah, so it was just
yes.
Like, I'm saying, we were gutted because he was like our talisman. But yeah, not having somebody like that around. So no, I never knew that about McStay.
Right.
But aye, good for Connolly. The band, anything apart from, I think he's famous for goals. I want to say he scored a hat trick against Rangers, but I may be wrong. He's famous for the phantom goal, obviously.
The phantom goal, aye.
Which
for us,
just still blows my mind out.
For me, he was always a player that was linked to us as well. He always seemed to, because he was from a Celtic background,
course,
and he was always linked to us round about that time. So was Kevin Gallagher. Darren Jackson eventually ended up playing with us. So there's a lot of Dundee United players. There's always seemed to be a traffic between Tannadice and Celtic Park.
There always is. And I've seen it with loans as well. Like we get Ralston off you. I think we've had a few loanees over there. I thought Ralston was brilliant when he came to us, actually, and he's now getting his chance. So there obviously seems to be a wee thing. I don't know where it's getting Mark Namara and Donnelly in for a while as well, if that strengthened. But there's a wee thing anyway.
Armstrong, Gary Mackay-Stephen as well, going that way. Stuart Armstrong's went leaps and bounds since.
He always knew he would. He's just like, he is a player, and him and GMS. I like GMS, but at the same time, I thought GMS was mere a fancy trick guy. Sometimes he just wouldn't deliver, but Armstrong was the guy that you knew would.
GMS needs to leave Hearts first for me to actually look at him in a good light while he's still playing for Hearts. We spoke about the football change, and it's 1990. We've had Acid House, Manchester. It's still ongoing at this point.
Still kicking off.
It's still kicking off at this point. De La Soul had an album out, 3 Feet High and Rising, which was released in '89, which kind of summed up the happiness of that time. Everybody was saying Setting Summer of Love was meant to be 88, but then you've got Manchester 1990. You've got Bez on top of the hotel in Ibiza. You've got all of that. For me, there was a song that was released that year in 1990 which sums up 1990 for me, and it was Groovers in the Heart by Delight.
That's a tune.
They were a New York trio, and the track was basically, one of them was a DJ, and it was a mixture of, I think it's got 43 samples on it. It's got loads of samples on it. The main one being the bass line is Herbie Hancock, Bring Down the Birds, and the bass line is utterly fantastic. Q-Tip for A Tribe Called Quest does the rap on it, and Bootsy Collins does backing vocals on it.
It's madness, all the things put together and how good it sounds like, all these ideas. I think, I may be wrong, but I think that song has got something like 5 or 6 producers across the board. Fries my brain even to try and, like, 6 people all working on the one thing that comes out to be that song. But anything with Q-Tip, you've got maybe there, because he's the guy's one of the best rappers out there.
See for me,
always has been.
The bass line. The bass line is the hook through the whole song, and it's got loads of wee cartoonish, like, whistles and bells going off.
There's just
loads of
stuff that just doesn't make sense, but it actually makes sense.
It makes sense in the context of that record. It's a psychedelic record. The video is psychedelic as anything.
Even the one piece that Lady Miss Keir wears and everything, that looks like it's from the 60s as well. Like even her hair, actually, with the band and everything. No, that was probably a good example of this. I mean, because it's 1990 that was made. Going back a couple of summers to 19, and some DJ, whoever it was at Defected, the festival they do over in Croatia. And somebody played it in amongst their set, just in the beach stage, maybe like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And before the song had been played, because the beach stage is not really few people dancing. They're all having sunbathing, having drinks and all that. But when that tune came on, the amount of people that had just been lying on their sun lounge, and suddenly you could see them, they're up and they're nodding their head and having a wee dance in their sunbed. And then when it went away again, just like
back down.
So even almost 30 years later, still bangs. It's still.
See, for me, it's one of these songs that can't be remixed.
No,
you couldn't make that any funkier than what it already is. You couldn't do anything to make that song better.
Well, that's the thing. Somebody, I don't know if you're aware, I don't know the name of the woman singer, but they've done a remix, they've done a cover. And it's so close, and that's probably the best compliment. You don't want to make it any different. And instead of Q-Tip, it's Black Thought for the Roots, and his rhyme is really good as well. It's a good cover, but that's because it's literally just.
You couldn't rip it apart. There's no way you can rip that apart. You try to slow that bass line down or take that bass line and do something else with it. It's not working. It's really not working. For me, it's a song that perfectly captures. There's a lot of songs that capture 1990. I'm a mere Manchester guy, and you're a mere electronic music guy. But if somebody says to me, name a song at Hingleys that sums up 1990, I'll go, well, a song that was a massive hit was Delight, Groovers in the Heart. And as you say, you can play it 30 years later and it will still fill a dance floor.
Absolutely. But you can, and 20 years from now, same result. It's one of those songs that was nothing ever like it before, and there's never been anything like it, and that's what sticks out.
If some bands try to copy it, the Avalanches, the Hinks, Fatboy Slim's got a bit of an influence in that, but there's been nothing to touch it, to touch it whatsoever.
When it's that level of genius, you just leave it alone.
Definitely, you always leave genius alone, and with that, we'll move to 1996. 1996, it's coming home. The Euros that year always comes to mind.
Home.
And also Celtic were home at.
So it even says in the back of the book at the very bottom.
Oh, so it does. It's coming home, but Will Zico. Fantastic. Celtic were also home at this time as well. the 10th of March 1996. I had to bring up, Johnny, Celtic and Dundee United have been involved in so many 2-1s and late goals. And late goals.
So many that it's almost unnatural, I would say, yeah. You know, they're low averages, but then there's Celtic and Dundee United and 2-1s and late winners, but so I'm a better.
Sorry. So this is a quarter-final of the Scottish Cup. And there's only 2 stands open at Celtic Park. You've got the North Stand, which has just been built, the main stand, and also there's a temporary stand behind one of the goals, which is just basically like park benches.
In other ways, it was like a building site, wasn't it?
The park's a mess. The park is an utter mess. What I didn't remember about this game, and when I started researching it, I forgot you were a First Division side at this point.
We were a First Division side.
I really did forget that, and it wasn't until I watched the highlights back. I was there that day. I shouldn't really need to watch the highlights back. So, no, I'll watch the highlights back just to see, jog my memory and stuff like that. And I'm going, a First Division side? I wouldn't have. Somebody would have said to me, where were Dundee United then? I said, they were top league. They were a top league. And you look at your side. You do look at your side. Maxwell, Perry, Elvis, Welsh, Malpass is still there. Winters, Dave Bowman's still there. He was still there 6 years before as well. Johnson, Owen Coyle, Gary McSwiggan and Brewster. When you look at that team, that's a top flight side.
That's a decent team.
That's a top flight side.
I mean, I think when we got relegated, I think we speculated a wee bit. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the players got us relegated, but I'm sure McSwiggan came in, we needed goals to get us out of that league. But that's, I mean, from back to front, that's a team, aye. But yeah, that was your wee adventure. That's all it was, one season. I actually quite enjoyed that season. Only because we got up at the end of it. Don't get me wrong, you only enjoy it because you're like, you got to all the different pubs and grounds and all that. But at the end of the season, you're like, well, I don't really want to go back to them next season again, though.
Aye.
But that was a disappointing day, considering the circumstances and that. You know,
I like that you says that. I mean, you speak about relegation then and go, we've got to go to different pubs. Some of the Celtic fans will never experience that. We probably will never experience that sort of adversity.
Aye.
When this is getting formed, I don't know when folk are going to watch it. We're in a bit of a rut at this precise moment in time. But it will come good.
Trust me, I didn't think you're going to see the Brecon City pies, which are excellent by the way, but there you go.
Aye.
It's these wee things when you go to the lower divisions. Yeah, you're watching a lower standard of football, but there is perks. You get your car parked easy. you get a pint in a new pub.
You get a pint in a new pub, stuff like that.
You get some home scran that's not like being shipped in with big caterers and that. But the football is also not that good. So.
I need to ask you about Ali Maxwell. Ali Maxwell broke your heart in the cup final, then all of a sudden he became your goalkeeper. How did you feel about that?
That's the eternal problem for a football fan, isn't it? We've all probably had it. I mean, maybe not so much Celtic Rangers, I suppose, but Maxwell.
We've had it with Scott McDonald. We've had Scott McDonald ending a title for us and coming and being a decent player for us.
You know, I've had a few. Billy Dodds is one that really sticks out to me because we hated the guy. He played for Dundee, Aberdeen, and he comes to us. But no get away from Maxwell. I mean, Maxwell, because if you remember right, this is the time we were yet to win the Scottish Cup.
Right.
You know, we didn't win it till 1994. And was it the 87, the Motherwell Cup final? 87 or 88, I can't remember.
Motherwell, was it no 92?
Sorry,
96.
So
he's won the Cup in 95.
So we won, no, it was 94 against Rangers. Rangers had a double treble that we blew on the last day there.
Thank you for that.
Aye, obviously somebody came along and actually got one.
Eternally grateful for that.
So yeah, but it's the classic case that once they, my opinion, when they put your shirt on, it's like a clean slate. Unfortunately, if they start off badly, then it's tougher for them, But I mean, somebody like a Billy Dodds.
Hiya Kenny Miller.
Aye, something like a Billy Dodds. He scored a hat-trick in his first full 90 minutes. Welcome, Billy. You know,
Aye. We're fickle, eh?
Football fans, they're there or they're there, and they're never there.
We're extremely fickle.
I've seen it. I've seen it for you guys for the past 2 months. To be fair, like, so Ali Maxwell, and I mean, I think he was a good keeper at the end of the day. Yeah, I can't help but feel if Maxwell was in goals by the time we got promoted, he must have been. But he put off a few good saves that day at Parkhead. If I remember right, forget what we're going to talk about in a minute. The actual
first 15 minutes, he has 4 saves.
Celtic had a lot of chances that day. Let's despite the fact we were winning, not getting away from Celtic were like all over us. And you're right. He saved that game for being over before. For
me, it's a tale of two goalkeepers. In the first 25 minutes, Maxwell has 4 or 5 great saves to stop us going 1-0 up. He doesn't make them saves, the game's over.
Completely done.
Virtually in the first 20 minutes.
Yep.
Then Gordon Marshall, in goal for Celtic that day, decides to go for a wee wander and bring down Owen Coyle, I think it is. I think it's called.
Brewster. Brewster he brought
and he
down.
doesn't just bring him down, he actually lifts his foot.
He lifts his foot.
He lifts his foot to bring him down as well.
Because the argument was, I mean, once again, the mentality of somebody like me over the years going to somewhere like Glasgow, your expectations, as this is the flip side for fans. Your expectations look on Saturday or Sunday, I thought we'd have got a penalty and a sending off, but we got neither. If you remember right, Marshall didn't even get a card for that.
I know
it's just like it was a sending off, man. Come on, you gave the penalty.
I'm sure my 20-year-old self would have says, "Oh, that was the correct decision." But now, looking back on it, I'm going, "How did he not get sent off? Why did he not even get booked?"
It's like I remember the commentary is like, "I think Marshall's got a problem here," giving all that.
Brown commentary.
He might have done, but Scottish referees, sorry, Dick. So penalty, but nothing. No, you're fine, mate. We'll just forget the fact.
I know. As I say, looking back on it now, I'm like, that's weird. How did that know?
It's last man, like I've seen. He's lifted his leg. It's hardly a clipped him. No, it's like you stopped him.
And see, from a Celtic point of view, Johnny, sending off Gordon Marshall probably would have done us a favour. He's not fondly remembered as a Celtic goalkeeper.
Right?
He always had a mistake in him. And for us, when we look back on Tommy Burns' side, what a fantastic side. The side more warmly remembered than some teams that have actually won stuff for us because of the football that we actually played.
They were almost like not a direct comparison, but you remember Brazil 82. They never won, but they entertained people. It's like, and you're right with that Celtic side.
If somebody says to you, name the Celtic League Cup winning side in 2009 at Bet Rangers in extra time, we would struggle. But to say name Tommy Burns' Celtic side and go, oh yeah, that's that Celtic side there. For me, that's one of the reasons that I do support Celtic. We've got a romantic way that we want to play football.
I mean, unless I'm wrong, did you know at one in the same game, Tannadice specifically have Di Canio, Cadet and Van Hooijdonk all on the pitch at once,
and Andy Tom. It's like brilliant. Even thinking about that's absolutely brilliant. For me, Tommy's weakness was goalkeepers. During his time at Celtic, you had Pat Bonner, who was a veteran by that point, Gordon Marshall, and he eventually ended up with Stuart Kerr. And 3 of them just weren't up to the task of being a Celtic goalkeeper, unfortunately for Tommy. Owen Coyle takes a penalty kick and he misses it. Scores the rebound.
If I remember right, it was one of those. Brewster's tried to get himself in the mix, but he's made a nuisance of himself.
He made his nuisance of himself.
But by doing so, he's kneed the ball in front of Coyle, who's just cheers on. And that was that. But this is the days where you go 1-0 up at Celtic. You're just waiting on the Alamo after that. Then you've seen it before, and you're going to see it the next time you play there. And so
the thing is, Johnny, I'm going to need to mention Owen Coyle's hair. because it was such a tremendous bushy hair. He actually looked younger. He looked younger in his age at this point,
right? Aye.
Than he did. It was one thing I noticed. Dave Bowman as well always reminded me of somebody who, not remember the Hitman and Her.
Aye, Pete Waterman
and Michaela Strachan. I always used to picture David Bowman standing behind him in an Essex nightclub dancing away, just with that long ginger hair.
It was like, it was it wasn't quite a mullet, but it was just like, you still had to be a bit loved Bowman. I think he's still at Tannadice now doing stuff, but he's not somebody I would have went in for a 50-50 ball with, put it that way.
You had some amount of one club guys round about that time, guys that just stayed their whole career.
That's probably because they signed a contract and couldn't get away after that. It's like 15 years, mate. Signed it. No, we did. I mean, it's a difficult thing to see these days, but I mean, I could rattle them off like your Malpass, your Neri. I mean, Malpass had 2 testimonials. I mean, when you get 2 testimonials,
definitely.
It says, oh wow. So for as harsh treated as so-called Jim McLean must have, I mean, I suppose by '96 McLean was gone anyway, but I think it was Billy Kirkwood was the manager. Players
obviously enjoyed the club and the surroundings and the homely feel of it, and that, you say.
I think must have been something like that.
It's one thing I always remember about Dundee United. They always seem to have longevity and like consistency of their squad. There was always players that would come back. You go, are you still there? And there would never be anywhere else. We didn't really do nothing after you scored the penalty. The first half hour we've battled you. You went 1-0 up, and then we've really struggled after that.
All the chances I can remember is up the building site end.
Is at the building site end. There's no chances at all in the second half until we get a free kick, and the difference makers on our side. Big Van Hooijdonk manages to outjump the boy Welsh and score a great goal.
It was a bullet header, wasn't it? It was a good header.
It was a good header.
Nobody's it's his ball. Put it that way. When it comes across there, forget everybody else.
For all the faults of Van Hooijdonk, and he proved to be a infant terrible in nearly every club that he went to after us, and we fell out with us at the end of the season as well because he wanted a pay rise. He was a good striker. Then he goes to Feyenoord and basically wins them the UEFA Cup. Great free kick taker. He's probably more welcome at Celtic Park now than what he was then. But no guarantee. There's no taking away. We wouldn't get a Pierre Van Hooijdonk now coming to Scotland. There's no way we would get a Dutch international coming to Scotland after scoring 20 goals in the Eredivisie.
So, there's no way. No, of course, they're off bigger leagues after that. But the change days. I mean, I see he's getting Van Dijk. That was a bit of a coup when you see what that guy turned out to. So. We gems, you just got to know where to find them.
It's interesting from an opposing fan point of view that you mention the three amigos, as we called them, Di Canio, Cadet and Van Hooijdonk. Nobody ever mentions Andy Tom, and Andy Tom was the first of these European breakthrough players for a day.
That was a boy with a pedigree. It's just it was like, you know what, I think just because the other three for their own ways were larger than life, Andy Tom had that just get the job done.
East German mentality.
Efficiency. I didn't need to be causing all bother, getting everybody looking in my direction. If they look at me, it's because I've scored a goal. Or
when you look at this winning goal, Owen Coyle loses the ball in the middle of the park, and it's not a pass. I can't remember who tackles him for Celtic, but he just tackles Coyle and the ball bursts through.
And it's off then.
There's no other player on that park apart from Andy Tom scoring that goal, because he was the only one with that pace to take him away from the on-rushing Dundee United. The Dundee United defenders that were trying to rush onto him. If that ball had fell to Van Hooijdonk's no scoring. He's were unlucky that it fell to Tom.
There was a wee period where I thought, I can't remember who their defender was, but it was one of those ones like, you want to take a red card? Feel free to step in and take a red card here, mate. But nah,
I didn't think they got near him.
Maybe didn't he? It's maybe it's like, I'm always like, when it's a one-on-one situation, if you can just avoid it at the last minute, just take the red.
Especially in a cup tie, when you've went into the 90th minute and there's a replay at Tannadice coming up. You're going. You're maybe being a bit harsh. Having watched it back, I'm going, none of them were actually anywhere near him to actually have that that thought to try and do that.
But I'll be honest, see, because, Van Hooijdonk, 89 minutes, was it 89?
89.
And I actually turned and I said to my mate, stupidly considering the Parkhead experiences, I turned and I says, replay through the week then,
Famous last
and
words.
then when Tom scored, he looked at me, he was like, no, it's not.
What was it like being in that wee corner at Celtic Park? Because obviously you've just got a one main stand, and it's like...
It's just what... You know what, it's no different to what sort of Ibrox sort of would get, give you just like... I have to say, when you're an away fan and you go to Ibrox or Parkhead, I suppose it all depends on who's above you. But it could be an uncomfortable afternoon, just like you're just 1,000 of you who's just stuck in that wee bit, had pies and everything pelted down for Ibrox, but it was just, I don't know, it was one of those days where we're a First Division club, so suddenly it's like, you've got a chance to fucking, to go.
He's had quite a large support that day. He's had quite a large support that day because you have to give more tickets to the Scottish Cup at that time.
Because of the...
Or you did at that time anyway. I'm not too sure if that's still the rules. And he's had a great bounce when you scored, when you have a look on it on the highlights.
And then it was just the usual heartbreak after that. And that's the thing, no matter how many times it happens, it doesn't make it any easier. You don't just go, you're just like, not again.
Aye, I know. I remember the 88 Cup final. We were in the family enclosure, and this is a bizarre story. And there was only there was a family of Dundee United fans in front of us, and obviously McAvenny scores the winner, and there's one of the Dundee United fans in front of us, inconsolable, and my dad walks down to him and the family and says, "I'm sorry, it was yous again." Like, he was really, really apologetic. It was yous again. Bizarrely enough, the guy that was greeting, there was two boys there, one of them was greeting, one of them was fine. The boy that was fine, I worked with him 12 years later. Just bizarre. And we didn't know each other, and we got talking. He was a Falkirk fan, actually, he still is a Falkirk fan, and he mentioned that story, and I went, that was me and my dad.
I was like, I was there.
That was me and my dad had that conversation, which I found really bizarre.
That's a small world, but
definitely.
Just obviously, you were just under the line on. I fully believed in those days that you could have given us a second division team and we would have still gotten beaten the cup final at Hampden. It just seemed to be the team we had and what we won. Doesn't stack up.
It doesn't stack up.
It's a shame,
It doesn't stack up.
It's a shame, but it doesn't stack up for the fact that we just couldn't win cup finals. St Mirren, Motherwell, it's just used twice. I think it was 85 and 88 when McGarvey scored. McGarvey and Provan. Once again, we're winning 1-0 last 5 minutes or something. I don't know what that was, but I know it was late on.
It was late on, aye.
And the winner was late. I remember Hamish McAlpine no bothering to go for it.
Hamish McAlpine, who also played for Celtic.
Did he? Aye.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Aye, Hamish played for Celtic in a pre-season in 88.
Right.
He played for Celtic.
Just a wee fill in, just for a game or something?
It was only for a couple of games. Hamish McAlpine played for Celtic.
Because, he went to... I played for a few after us. I know he went to Wraith Rovers, but you actually see him at Hospitality, Matchday at Tannadice. He's still a character.
Again, me and you grew up during the 80s. Hamish McAlpine was always a great panini sticker. Just with that moustache and the way that he looked.
He used to swing on the bar and stuff, and seen him take the odd penalty now and again as well. I like to be penalty. I like to be penalties as well. But he's a character.
It's always the same. Have you seen the Twitter feed where the guy says, "What age do you think this footballer is when this picture was taken?"
Yes.
Why did guys in the 80s, when they were in their early 30s, look like they were 50?
Because that's the thing. The tendency when you're a wee boy, anybody older generally has a big man type of thing. But still, the amount of years difference between me and Richard Gough was probably not that bad. But yeah,
he looked far older.
He's got the kit on. He's obviously a man, a giant man. I'm just a wee kid at the game, but I don't know. It was just something about that. There's just like they just take on such a higher bit of importance. I remember even like when I would see away teams come in and all these guys like Miller and McLeish that I'd never seen in the flesh, and I don't know don't know if the shed is. I don't know if you had it at Tannadice, but we had old days. You had like a wee wall right at the front of the stand, the terracing, and it went along the front of the shed, and it meant you could sit. Like the kids, so the kids could go sort of like
on the wall,
and basically, so it was rows of kids. So you're seeing somebody like a McLeish coming to get the ball for a throw, and I'm just like, size of the boy.
I know.
They'd become something to you that was flesh and blood at the end of the day.
I remember meeting Craig Burley and no believing the height of Craig Burley, because he looked wee and stocky on the pitch. And I met him, it was at a Celtic Supporters Club function, and he's over 6 foot. And he's built, and you're like, wow, I didn't really expect that. And as you say, but in the 80s, when you're seeing these guys coming up to pick up the ball, we're not seeing them as much as what we're seeing them now on telly. We're not seeing them as much as we're seeing them on Instagram, on Twitter, or something like that. So these guys in the flesh was like a novelty.
Aye. And they just appeared giants to you. You know. That was some days.
Aye. So we'll move swiftly on, unless you want to mention Gary McSwiggan's last minute goal. The following season.
Because obviously when we got the 96 season, I was like, I remember 96, 97. I didn't blame you for choosing that one. That was the dramatic one. But I'll always remember the McSwiggan game, because obviously, I mean, there's a good example. We've played you in the Cup as a First Division team, but then the season's ended, we've got ourselves promoted, so we are...
Tommy McLean's your manager at this point.
I think 6 games in, he got the job. I remember he joined Wraith Rovers.
Yes.
It was pretty controversial. I mean, I think we've got a habit of stealing Wraith Rovers managers. We've done it with Levine as well. But I think McLean had done 1 game and then left. But it turned out to be a shrewd appointment. And for what I remember, I think, ironically, we got to beat you with a late goal.
Yes. It was probably the goal that sealed Rangers' tainted 9 in a row.
Yeah, right.
Because that put us basically out the race. To stop them doing 9, that goal, and an ex-Rangers player scoring it, and it's a decent lob.
It was a good lob. I think because we've been a First Division team and now we're back, it's like, right, we need to actually kind of beat a few decent teams to actually show that we're back as such. The one thing, I mean, obviously apart from the low, I can't really remember much about that game. I had 2 Celtic fans sat beside me, you know, like, I think we've all sat in the away end at some point just so we can get to the game. I've sat inside Ibrox and watched Dundee United in like the Copeland Road. It's just difficult, sitting on your hands and everything, like, but there was 2 guys, and you know, they weren't being blatant, they weren't actually shouting we are Celtic fans, they were just trying to be respectful and say, you know what, I see the game, but we have to sit here. But there was a couple of things just that you had said that was like, give the game away. It's like, plus United's a wee stadium, top tier. Most people's got season tickets, so you notice the people. I've never seen them before.
I've never seen them before, I know.
They didn't realise that other people, regulars, notice that, but you do. So there were clearly a couple of Celtic fans, and of course McSwiggan scored. And like you do, like you're outpouring of joy, you just grab anybody around me, but obviously intentionally grabbed these 2 boys. I was like, yeah, beauty. And obviously they tried to do a wee half-hearted bounce, but you could tell.
You can't fake that.
You can't. It's like, and a couple of minutes later they went. I was just enjoy the trip back. There's no animosity or that, but I was definitely at it by intentionally grabbing them for the goal, like just like fucking yeah.
That's always the case. I was just thinking there when you were mentioning that. I've only ever done it being in the away ends and free grounds that I can remember off the top of my head just now. Anfield in 2003, I was in the Cop at Anfield. Dunfermline, I've done it at Dunfermline, and Tannadice is the only other ground that I've done it. And the one in Tannadice, again, it was a late goal. Craig Burley actually scored Wim Janssen's season, and I was in what's the stand across for the telecameras, the big one that runs along the
George Fox.
The George Fox. I was in the George Fox. I think we scored in about 89 minutes to make it 2-0. We were 1-0 up and Burley basically sealed it, And I jumped in knowing full well there was a minute left, and if I was getting horsed out, I'm not actually that bothered if I'm going to get horsed out.
Dating the George Fox, you're going to be fine. It's like if you, I've seen Rangers fans doing it in the East Stand, and that's a different proposition altogether. I mean, we've all done it. My worst one was, we played East Fife in the Scottish Cup. I can't remember the year. It was maybe about 96. It was something like that. And they were winning 1-0, 95 minutes. They're winning 1-0. We're at the cup. Paddy Connolly scores with the last kick of the game. And I was in East Fife end that day, and it wasn't a case of me intentionally going, yes, it just came from within. And as soon as I'd done it, and I just seen everybody looking around, and you flip it round, fairy tale of the cup, this wee team's they're literally seconds away from Dundee United, knocking them out. What a result for them. And it's the balls burst, and then suddenly they've got a guy cheering. I just left straight away. I was just like,
sometimes you know that you've just done you've just went too much. You've just done too much. We'll go to the music now. 86, obviously Britpop. For me, if you look at the history books say Britpop's still on at this point. My argument is it ended with Blur and versus Oasis. That was the end of Britpop, and everything after it came after that was post, and it was a bit.
There's always got to be a label for something.
But I think Britpop basically ended when Blur and Oasis basically became front page news. But there was a band broke out in 96. Guy like yourself who's been on the rave scene, guy like me who had heard music for Agility Generation. I went, oh wow, what's that? That is a seminal album. That. But then you hear Firestarter by the Prodigy, and you're like, what in God's name is that?
It was,
and this fires on mainstream,
Aye, I mean it was like nothing. Well, going back to Delight, but it was quite literally nothing you'd heard before. Especially, I mean, I'm going back to when the difference as the years went on, because I might be wrong, but I think the first when I was DJing, I bought him when he came out. It was called Prodigy Android EP, and I think that was the first thing they brought out, and it couldn't be further away from Firestarter. I mean, Keith was just a dancer in those days. You never got anywhere near the vocals. I think this was possibly just before Charlie. Do you remember? Because I think Charlie says
it was after Charlie.
I think Charlie says got into the charts, and then obviously you had your other ones, Everybody in the Place.
Charlie will be 93. Charlie will be round about 93, and this Agility Generation's 94, and then Fatted Alive.
So as you can see, the way they just the way they evolved, they
become harder. They become more punk.
They
become more. It's an utter rejection of the scene that they've come for. And that's Liam Howlett for you. That's just I'm going to reject everything that people think we are, and move on.
It's a brave thing to do when you've become so well known and so well liked for doing something. I see it with DJs. Like some of my favourite DJs over the past few years have decided to change their sound. It's like they're going for something else, and it's leaving me behind, because it's like, I like your old stuff, but I don't like what you're doing now. Firestarter was just I'm thinking of the video right now. I mean, you genuinely didn't even a video like that didn't represent house music in any shape or form. I could have seen Firestarter played at Glastonbury or something like that, and all the, in those days around their leather jackets and all that, but everybody getting into it. It was and you know what, after that I'd say they never really reverted back again. They became, Liam got harder with the stuff that he was doing. Keith Flint basically becomes a superstar on the basis of that vocal and that video, and he becomes this sort of, just like the hair and everything. It's just,
I was 21 at this point, so seeing something like that, it's not going to scare me.
No.
It's not going to go, oh, that's a bit shocking, ain't it? Because you'd seen photos of the Prodigy and the NME and all that. Was a big NME. I bought the NME and stuff like that. But if you were, I was thinking back, and I remember seeing Boy George on Top of the Pops, and gone, what's that?
Aye, the first time,
I'm confused here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were that day.
So, if I was a 6 or 7 year old seeing Keith Flint appear on my telly on the chart show on a Saturday morning, walking about with an alligator on a chain, like you're going, what in God's name is that?
Aye.
And for that to be a breakthrough song is unbelievable. It shows the genius of the Prodigy, and it shows the personality of Keith Flint.
Aye, just you got to have balls to completely, you got a winning formula that you could just continue to just tag along, just milk it. Maybe, but I'm going to change it.
I'm going to change it, and this is how I'm going to open it.
Because you seen it was like it must have been around the same time. I'm not sure which came first, but remember Smack My Bitch Up video as well. I mean that was something else. And when you find out at the end it's not even a guy, you're like, what? I refuse to believe a woman just went out and had a night like that.
It's like it was almost as if they deliberately went to shock. And I'm saying it's a rejection in the rave scene, but it could actually be a rejection of the bland. Right, you've got Oasis tearing it up at this point, quite Wild Boys doing, and you've got the lad culture.
Yeah.
But they just seem to they went lad culture.
You had Loaded magazine and just
stuff like that. But
time.
The Prodigy didn't fit with that either. The video for Smack My Bitch Up is not. It's an artistic statement to go. We're going to. You automatically says there, he didn't believe it was a boy. He says a woman wouldn't do that, and that was a flipping of that lad culture on its head to go, what you think is not what you're seeing here,
Yeah.
And that's very intelligent for me. And
that was and like you're saying, it was groundbreaking. By that point, you weren't hearing, and I'm sure the Prodigy would have understood this and were well, settled by it, but you wouldn't hear so much of the Prodigy playing in a club, in a night, in a DJ set.
They become a live band.
Aye, it's like
a live
they've done
band
that.
at this point.
Aye, it's like their songs were they're no longer something you can include in a set list and say I'm going to mix that into into Firestarter. No, you're not.
Aye, it's not going to work.
Nobody's mixing anything into Firestarter. But I just thought it was admirable, and that I think they're making. They're not bringing new stuff out recently.
They are going to bring.
I've seen something.
Again, it kind of reminds me of when they go the metal way, of what the KLF done with Extreme Noise Terror. They just went, we're just going to mess this up and then see what we can get away with here. It's the Britpop's here, and I mentioned Euro 96. It's coming home in that. One of the songs that sticks out for this year for me is Becast, and it's Walk Away. And the reason it sticks out for me, Johnny, is because it's what the BBC played when England got put out with penalties with Germany. That's what they played over the titles. And I always remember that. I always remember that for some...
For some reason, I'm not sure I watched a different channel that night then or something, because I'm sure because I always make a note to see what songs they've picked. I remember one, it was Green Day, Time of Your Life. It was just but it's always something sad because they've not won it.
Streets That Dry Your Eyes in 2004, That's like...
I'm sure a Scottish person chose that one.
It's not that. I mean, these Mike Skinner and that make money out of misery because that goes massive because it's been used in that context. In 1996, what was Johnny Proctor listening to?
1996, I mean, that was like proper... I'm looking straight away and I could see Ibiza, and it's totally leading me to all those types of songs. It generally no stuff that you're getting in there in the charts. Or, I suppose some of these dance tunes do end up into the charts. Things like, Tori Amos, Professional Widow. It was Armand Van Helden remix. Remember it. Things like that gets to be referenced in the book. Todd Terry, Keep On Jumping. Things like that. No much that you would have probably seen in the charts. I mean, that's the motivation for the second book was, that was kind of like a lot of the good Ibiza years that you would spend out there, and I thought, may as well make a book.
Ibiza now, I've been there a couple of times, but obviously no since lockdown and all that.
I've not been for a while.
It seems to be a bit American now, It seems to be a bit Wayne Lineker buy £70 bottle of champagne and sit in a beach club during the day.
To me, when I first started going to Ibiza, if you told me that years later I would be sharing the same club with Neymar and Messi, I'd be like, I wouldn't even known who those guys were at the time. If you just told me like whoever the world's biggest football players were and say they'll go to the same club in Ibiza, you'd be like, nah, surely not. And then they do, and then you see it's VIP bottle service and €30 for a bottle of water, and Ibiza never used to be like that. I've not been for a few years. It looks a challenge at times. I mean,
it looks very Love Island.
Yeah. I mean, if you see like that, you see Wayne Lineker, Ocean Beach, it just looks like somebody that's actually been's told me it's actually just like a compound. It looks like some paradise or something. It's actually a compound with some beds put on it and bars. But it's a case you go there. Things like, and this is totally goes against what I thought Ibiza always was. You can go to this place and pay whatever amount of euros. Just so you can post this on Instagram, obviously, you get showered with champagne.
Champagne,
You go to Ibiza, go to clubs and just like stay up all night. But I have to say, I got a wee taste of something different in the sense of me and the other half going to Croatia. That was like a 6-day thing, so I mean it was quite intense, 6 days in a row and everything. But the actual vibe, the wee village that it's held in, if it's not for the venue, it's quite a relatively small place. There's maybe like 2 pubs, 2 restaurants, so it's no like Ibiza. Like when you're outside the festival, there's nobody drunk running about. Just it was a good alternative, and I come away from the 6 days. I defected saying, you know what, I had a better time here than a
defected festival.
They just put on the whole thing themselves, and you've got 3 stages, you've got the afters. It's like a massive open air club. I think it holds about 5,000 people, Barbarella's. So you could quite literally be on the go till 6 o'clock next morning, and that's like 6 days in a row. It was quite hard going at times. Still in my
Croatia was always seen as the next place.
It's a really nice place, really friendly people. It's really cheap. Like you get fleeced in Ibiza big time. Like a beer at Defected, despite being a festival, was working at about £2. I was at Warehouse Project in Manchester 2 weeks ago, and it was £5.50. So there's a difference.
There you go. I mean, there you go, lads. A recommendation.
Aye. But
defected in Croatia.
And Tisno.
I think we should have a Screamacelica night out in defected in Croatia. 6 days rave.
Doesn't seem like Croatia outside anyway, does it?
I'm into that. Well, we'll end 96 here and we'll move on to Naughty now. Naughty. The year 2000. The 30th of July 2000 to be exact, that we're back to. The end of the previous season, the 99-2000 season, Celtic ended against Dundee United at Celtic Park. A 2-0 victory, when bizarrely enough Jim Goodwin made his debut for Celtic. The one and only game he ever played for Celtic. Right? John Kennedy played as a 16-year-old. But on the 60-odd minutes, I can't remember the minute, Henrik Larsson came back from his leg break in Lyon. Played 15 minutes and was took to the Euros. So that was the reason. First game of the following season, 6:05 on a Sunday night. Sky now really getting involved in the Scottish game. Yeah. We go to Tannadice.
A beautiful night.
Beautiful night.
It was beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful night. The attendance that night was 11,761, which I still think is a decent attendance for 6:05 on a Sunday night.
On a Sunday that's on TV. It just shows you though, because what I'm saying about that stadium holds 14.5, but even when it looks pretty full, you still end up with attendance that says something like 11 or 12.
11 or 12,000.
But I mean, it's a night I remember well, just because of all those sort of components, like you're saying. It was a Sunday night. It was the first day. It was the first day of the season. Yeah. And that was why it was 6 o'clock. Would I be correct in saying it was Martin O'Neill's first league game?
Martin O'Neill's first league game as Celtic manager.
It's like we've got this thing with Martin O'Neill done. You always get this with certain teams. First league game, and then his last game, the Scottish Cup. It's like, so it was the same team. But I always remember that.
Even though we won that cup final, it's still one of the worst cup finals I've ever been at.
Brutal. I still think of Alan Archibald hitting the bar.
I hit the bar, that's right.
It's just like, I was right behind the goal and it was like, it's in. No, it's not in. One of the things I remember about that night is none of us wore your home shirts.
Yes.
I'm not sure if yous were pushed into wearing your shirt because we wore green. Because we're the home team, so obviously we could have wore tangerine.
Why did you wear green that night? Because there's a few explanations.
Because of because I'd be right in saying it was like 2009,
2001 season.
It was basically a wee bit of homage to Dundee Hibernian. It was like, which I think it was within 20 odd years we played under before changing. So it was like, and I think we'd done it for 2 seasons. I'm sure we had 2 different tops, and I'm pretty sure because it was a new shirt, we want to wear it, probably want to sell it.
Was it a one-off kit, or was it your away kit that season?
Oh no, it was a away kit.
It was a away kit that season.
Aye. And I'm not sure if it's to do with some centenary or something, because obviously we've kind of 2 centenaries, because we've had the Hibs one. Mm-hmm. And then we've had then we've had.
It would maybe then be the centenary of Dundee Hibs.
Aye, because it was. You know what? I think I'm bad with dates, but I think Dundee Hibs could have been 1918, 1919. They were formed. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Try to work it out, but that was the reason anyway. And I'm assuming because we wanted to wear it, being the new top, we want to show it to everybody. User pushed into wearing the gold ones,
which is fine because we love that kit.
That was a nice kit.
We actually love that kit. That kit signifies a great season for us. That kit, and they've never actually tried to remake it. No. Like nobody's ever went, well, we'll go for that yellow, that gold and green.
Because you get that now and again where they will go back and they'll revisit something.
That's one thing I remember about Dundee United in the 80s. He's always had great kits. The Adidas kit, the simple Adidas template kits with VG on the front of it. It's just one that sticks out in my mind.
The Adidas ones were absolutely minted, and then it was a slippery slope after that. It's some of the makers we've had. I still don't know who the companies are.
ACSOM'S,
TFG. I don't know. Still don't know who TFG was.
The 96 game we spoke about was Pony.
Lucky. I think it was one. It was Lucky. I think we booked a one. But never. Since the Adidas tops, I mean, that was the pinnacle. That was the pinnacle. The things I would do to get United back in Adidas again.
Adidas. It was just simple. It was the colour scheme, the orange and black colour scheme actually goes, and it's like just looks classic. When you look at Dundee United in the 80s, and especially like the 88 Cup final, the 85 Cup final, and that kit is just perfect. And we should never have been moved from all this garish stuff that we've got now. And
well, horrible. This is like, it's the current United top is. I'd say it's about 50-50 split with the fans. There's some think it's smart and other ones just think it's like me, I think it's like heinous. It's, why I always wanted us to have a wee polo shirt top. I thought that would be really cool.
Aye.
So they do it, but it looks like somebody's like Wolverine's just slashed the side of it, and it's but a lot of guys like it, and it's like fair enough. That's what football tops are about. I'm probably more traditionalist. Just make it simple. Keep the colours. Let's leave Freddy Krueger out of things here. I agree with you, Johnny. I haven't bought a replica kit since 2007. Mainly because they're not for me. I've always says if you were over 30, you shouldn't be wearing a replica kit. Me too.
And I'm that's my take on things.
And especially like with the name and number.
With your name and number on it.
Well, the cup final we were just speaking about. There's a good example actually. The cup final he's beat us 1-0.
Martin O'Neill's last game, 2005.
Was Alano the free kick? Yeah, it was a free kick.
The free kick.
Aye. So that shirt that season, I just thought was terrible. TFG.
Aye.
The round neck wasn't round; it was all misshapen and everything. It was a horrible top, and I was like, but you know what? We're in a cup final. Mm-hmm. I actually want to at least maybe wear something. But I didn't want to wear that. Ended up, it's all thanks to you actually. You had played Shakhtar Shakhtar Donetsk.
Yes.
And I think they'd beat you
Champions League
3-0 or something, or something like that.
It always better 3-0. that was a standard scoreline in Europe.
And I remember their top was just plain tangerine, with the actual three stripes Adidas.
Yes.
I was like, that's the top. But do you think you could actually buy that? Think internet, you can buy anything you like. Nah, no Shakhtar Donetsk top, you can't. Apparently you could buy Kiev. Do you know Kiev? Because they were like the premier sort of. But any other Ukrainian team, forget it. I end up contacting, just messing about on Google. Somebody had actually made a wee Yahoo fan club. Like, I think Yahoo gave you the option to make up fan clubs and things, and it was a Shakhtar Donetsk. Just got in touch with the boy and said, look, any chance you could tell me I could get one of the taps? I'm from Scotland. Gave him the bump. Emailed me back and he said, look, just give me your size, I'll send one to you. I'm like, honestly? And then he's like, do you want a sponsor on it? Do you want a sponsor off? I'm like, who's this guy? I said, well, if you get one without a sponsor.
Is he knocking them up in his back bedroom?
Honestly, about 5-6 weeks later, there's this battered package with about 75 stamps on it and everything. Opened up, it was the Shakhtar strip. Proper, like, the double lining player issue thing. I don't know if he had a connection to the club. So I sent him a United one. It's a wee sort of, so somebody in Donetsk got a Dundee United top, and he was saying he was going to wear it to their stadium.
Their stadium.
I was like, well, I'm going to wear it to the cup final. And spend half the day.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic.
When you hear wee football stories like that,
that's brilliant.
Told strangers, like, the guy didn't ask me for money to begin with. He says, I'll send you it. So therefore, I didn't have to send him something back. But I mean, it's the right thing to do. But so I'm the same as you. I'll buy a football top, but I'll likely not buy my own one. I think the last one I bought was Boca Juniors because it reminded me of the Lendl.
The Lendl
shirt.
I remember that.
But it's near because of things like that rather than a current top.
I've got 2 kids now as well, so they get the replica tops. I'm just.
Sometimes I would buy them just for going on holiday.
I end up buying the order T-shirts of World in Motion, stuff like that.
It's like, football tops. Once you got to the casuals days, it was like you don't really want to wear a football top because you're not a kid any longer and all that. And to be fair, if I want a football top, could have avoided a lot of hassle.
You also go
over the years.
You also get to a certain stage, Johnny, where your football's a day out and you're going out after the game, so you didn't want to be kicking about in a replica kit.
Aye.
And so
stop yourself from getting into certain places.
So you don't. So you are going dressed to the football because you are going out after it. And sometimes, as you say, especially if you've got certain labels and that on and that, it's just it's a compass to be attracted.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you look at the Dundee United team at this time, it's much changed for the 96 side. You've got Alan Coombe, McCracken, DeVos, Alfro, or whatever you say that.
Joffrey.
Joffrey. Heaney. David Hanna, who's went back to you after playing for Celtic. Buchan, Craig Easton, Patterson, Alex Maffey and Stephen Thompson. It's a much change. It's a much change Dundee United.
No disrespect, but it's a big climb down to the previous 2 teams that played you. And it's probably an indication of life not really working out anymore for Dundee United. You look at me when I started going, it was like, beat anybody in Europe that cared to just show up and play us, and then get to the year 2000 and
you look in the space of the 10 years. I go back to the Kevin McCara match report of the first game on the 13th of January 1990, and he's talking about how surprised Europe will be that Dundee United might not be there at the end of the season.
Yes, exactly.
Then 10 years later, there's a side where you can see a decline. From a Celtic point of view, this is a point where we actually see a change in our fortunes because Martin O'Neill is now rocked up. Even that day, we've got Jonathan Gould in goals. Big Rab Douglas hadn't actually signed for us by this point. Alan Stubbs, Yusuf Al-Harn, Tom Boyd, Stephen Maye, Jackie Mack, Paul Lambert, European Cup winner 2 years before, Eyal Berkovic, Stan Petrov, Larsson and Sutton. Nice. The difference in the quality of the 2 squads when you actually see it, say it out loud.
Even if you could have kept that team and we maybe bring along a 96 team, there's still a gulf there.
There's still a gulf there.
So to actually have that team up against our 2000 team, it's Yeah, there's a difference, and it was a. We were in that period where just crazy decisions were being made. I mean, we were just bringing players from all over the world. Like, you know, we're the famous team that signed somebody and signed the wrong guy, and
Aye.
Rojas. But you know, we've had a few things, and that was showing you where the decline was kind of coming, because I mean, your two strikers there, Alec Matthew and Stephen Thompson. Matthew was there.
No, this is the same Alec Matthew that played for Celtic on the 13th of January 1990.
And did he go to Newcastle then?
No, he went to Morton. Then
Newcastle, then Ipswich, and then... I may be wrong, because you know newspapers talk... They're not exactly accurate most of the time, but I understand we paid more than $1 million, or around about $1 million for Alec Matthews, so it's a lot of money for a Dundee United. We thought it was a coup, getting a guy for the English Premier League.
Again, we go back 10 years. Dundee United paying £1 million for somebody, Celtic paying £1 million for somebody is no in the ballpark. 10 years later, the game's awash with bank's money, because there's no the club's money.
Exactly.
There's no the club's money. I mean, and you're paying £1 million for Alec Matthew, seemingly. I remember St Johnstone paying 800 grand for John Spencer. No, it was Motherwell paying 800 grand for John Spencer, and you're going, where's this money coming from? It's bizarre.
I mean, I always got the impression it was everybody just trying to hang on to Rangers' coattails, really. Yeah, it was like, you know, a lot of teams changed their philosophy. Look, it's like some of the guys, Hibs played the French guys and everything, you know, just...
Soze was a cracking
Christophe Coquard, I mean, I remember him, he was a decent striker. David Zattel, you know, I think everybody team had their wee examples of signing what other, you know, normal circumstances would have been considered pretty mental signings, but it was like, you know, some of your guys, I mean, Cameroonians, I don't even remember Missy. What a name for a guy. It's like, the clue's in the name,
Gerard Nixon. I always remember Gerard Nixon,
Well, remember, Golak tried to say that he was worth 20 million, We were like...
That's right, Golak, who could have been the Celtic manager at one point as well. Good Ivan.
Love Golak, absolutely love Golak. Could have worked for you guys, but I mean, you talk about our side, you see straight away that's the Martin O'Neill early doors team, and he never really changed the philosophy. I mean, I always used to liken your defenders like Monsters Inc. or something. They were always big guys, and Baldy and Ramon Vega and even Stubbs, like they were always big guys that O'Neill put, but up front it was guys that were just would punish you in a heartbeat.
There's an argument about a style of football, and there's a winning style of football, and there's an aesthetically pleasing style of football. And while Martin O'Neill, as you said, they had the big guys, I love that description, Monsters Inc. I love that. I could just actually see them as...
That's the way I viewed them, as because they just, you know, like before a game kicks off and you see the teams just like setting up their formations, and you just see Celtic and they just... Even like Tandres, you know, it's like they would be up the other end of the pitch at the start of the game, and I would still see them lining up, and it's like, imagine playing against them.
I know.
90 minutes getting just, wouldn't it have been enjoyable?
Martin O'Neill built a side like that. It was the way that I would describe them as a team of men. They were big, they were English Premier League, they were athletic guys, but the jewel in the crown, it made it a Celtic side. There was a couple, actually. You had Alan Thompson, who for a period was the best left winger in Scotland, ended up getting an England cap. Very unusual for somebody to get an England cap when they're playing in Scotland. You've got Chris Sutton, like him or love him, he was one of the top strikers in England, part of the famous SAS. You had Stan Petrov, who was a cracking player, who could produce moments of brilliance. But then you've got Henrik Larsson, who is for me, you can argue with me all you want, but the greatest player ever to play in Scotland, hands down.
I agree.
For the 7 year that he was here, he is.
It's one of those ones that as a United supporter, and I've seen Rangers Celtic so many times, and I rank Larsson above Laudrup, but I feel privileged to have seen Laudrup as well, because the guy was...
if somebody asked me who's the greatest Rangers player that you've seen, I go, Laudrup.
I mean,
Laudrup was only here for 3 years though. We had Larsson for 7.
But he just, you just epitomised, though, in that game. You know, as far as I remember, I don't remember we were getting battered in the game before he scored. It was like it's first day of the season. People feeling themselves out in that. And then Larsson just does a Larsson, just as casual as you like as well. It was just
That's a great finish.
I mean, I sit behind those goals in the top tier, and like the view I got that day, and when it's Larsson, you just had to just like you just look to your mate and just like you can't blame somebody. You should have the boy's talented, and he's just showed.
On paper, you mentioned the disparity of the squad, but you're right what you say in that game. It was a close game.
Aye.
And memory plays tricks on you. You think Chris Sutton scored a late goal, but it was actually 60-odd minutes he scored.
Aye.
And we basically hung on. And this was just a change of mentality. I remember walking out the ground going, well, I wasn't there, but I remember when the game finished going, that's a change of mentality. We would have lost that game last season.
Yes,
and that was the feeling. But then when you look at the two squads and you go, well, we should have really maybe walked that game. And I think that's a credit to Dundee United that day. First game of the season, big game on Sky, great summer's night. It was a perfect summer's night.
Aye.
I think that Dundee United team done well that night.
I think it was one of those, especially being first day of the season. I think you're one of the books I cover the first day of the season, how everybody's full of positivity.
Oh, aye.
It doesn't matter who you support. It's the first day of the season. Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. Anything else.
And there you go. And it's like, it was so Wales disappointing to lose because, like, unfortunately, you play Celtic or Rangers in those days. You generally, if you're going to be realistic, anything can happen. You can beat them, but most of the time you're not. It was quite novel on Sunday actually to be drawn 1-1 with yous. Half an hour to go, and fair dues, you did hit the crossbar a couple of times, but I've never had this feeling for a long time at Parkhead being 1-1 with Celtic and thinking, can we hang on for a draw? I actually was thinking we could win this game today. Yeah,
you did have a chance in the last minute.
And it's like you always get that chance. So, I mean, like I'm saying, crossbar saved us and stuff, but that was like, I've not had that feeling in a long time. But whether that's the next time you go to Parkhead and the team's gelled, maybe no.
Who knows? But we can't argue that.
But and that could have only been, when was your Rangers Celtic 6-2? Was that the next week?
Couple of weeks later.
Couple of weeks later.
And that was 2000. By this point, myself, I reckon the music I'm into is disappearing. It's not as strong. I'm getting older and stuff like that. But I worked in a warehouse at this point. And it used to be Radio 1 all the time that they would play. And this song, ODB, Got Your Money, featuring Kelly's, I always used to stop when it came on just because of the breakbeat that the Neptune's production came in. And it's not so much the song. The song's a good song. It's no ODB's best song by a long shot, but it's just the fact that this was a massive hit with a member of the Wu-Tang Clan, who were a massive, who were a big part of my life at that point. And it's a great pop song. You can actually feel Pharrell Williams' hands all across this song by ODB.
The production, it's the most, like, if you were to think ODB is going to have a song on his own, it's the most anti-ODB song we would possibly ever expect to hear. Right?
It's built to be a hit.
It's just like, it's clearly with that, it's got everything, like, with the singing and all that, but it still blew my mind. It made the charts. Choose your things come on. I mean, obviously, like, you look at songs that have been banned in the charts and everything, but some of the lyrics in that is just like,
it's a very, very risky.
He's talking about what Eddie Murphy showed him back at the house and stuff like that. That's no Radio 1 stuff. And even calling women bitches and stuff like that, I don't think that's. But
I remember when it was played on the radio, the first line is always beeped out. Then the second line comes in, and as you say, the subject matter is completely off.
But yeah, at the end of the day, you're never ever getting older to record a song and it be Sunshine and lollipops.
He goes into that character, and well, it wasn't really a character; it was him.
Aye.
But when you listen to other stuff that he does with the Wu-Tang, like Shimmy Shimmy Ya, and you hear this, you go,
like
how can you go from doing Shimmy Shimmy Ya to doing this? Because basically, even though the Wu-Tang were massive in America, this made him massive as a solo artist.
Just the amount of people that didn't even know of the Wu-Tang Clan, but they know of him. Mm-hmm. But it's always the way. It's like you're saying, it's not your favourite song. No, my favourite song. Brooklyn Zoo's my favourite song. I love Brooklyn Zoo, but it's so far away from Got Your Money. Mm-hmm. So far away.
I think it's a surprise. It's a surprising nature of this song that it jumped out when I was looking at the songs of this year. I went, wow, and it just took me back to this period of flying about in a forklift in a warehouse, listening to Radio 1 all the time, and this song getting played on Mark and Lard in the afternoon. And you're going, how can that be on daytime Radio 1?
Sometimes with that radio, I've not listened to Radio 1 a long time actually, but you can see them changing with stuff like that, or they would play the Streets. You would never ever have thought the Streets would be playing on daytime Radio 1, but it's got to move on,
You've got to move on.
But I thought it was quite funny though. Is it McDonald's that's chosen it for their advert?
Yes.
Got Your Money, yeah.
Aye.
I mean, the other half, we just have a wee laugh. It's just like it's that, and if somebody else thinks KFC's chose Ante Up.
Yes, that's right. Aye,
and I'm like,
right,
just play the lyrics then. Play the bit where they kidnap that fool.
Just go. It's how these songs are made the crossover. But then you look at what Pharrell Williams has actually produced. Then you go, this is the same guy that's done the soundtrack to Despicable Me. You go, and he's done this and he's done that. You're going, it's a bizarre mix.
When you see someone like you see someone like that. I mean, you know, be that if it's his own stuff or the Neptunes or blows your mind. I mean, I went to see Nile Rodgers a couple of weeks ago, and the amount of songs that guy's responsible for is just like. I mean, I'll be honest, it was more like my other half wanted to go, and that'll be a good night. Aye, cool, we'll go. But when I actually heard him. Like he does his wee intro if he's going to do the bit to do with Madonna or Diana Ross or David Bowie. It's just the talent. The talent in some of these people. It's the
guitar. You know when Nile Rodgers plays a guitar on a track, because it's that distinctive a sound that he's actually got. To end the Naughties, I'm going to ask you a question. It's maybe a loaded question, but it's one that needs answered. Who is your favourite member of the Wu-Tang?
My favourite member of the Wu-Tang, RZA. I answered that straight away. And you know what? He's maybe not the most colourful and all that, but what a talent the man is. You know, that's just straight away. I didn't have to think about it, but that's extending past just the music as well. Though it's just the guy's mind. You know, he looks to be always on the grind, trying to do something. I mean, Raekwon's one of the best lyrically. Raekwon's one of the best rappers. I mean, I wrote a piece about him for a website.
Sabotage Times, by any chance? Was it the Sabotage? Used to write for the Sabotage.
Used to write for Sabotage. Aye, it was Sabotage Times, and it was for his new album. And I called him a lyrical weapon of mass destruction, and I seem to mind he quite liked that. Because
that's a great.
It was like, you know, just the way he just comes out with it. A lot of talents in there, but I've got a lot of time for the RZA. His beats, the beats that he comes out with. And
Johnny, you're a novelist. This was your first book here in '90. What was your state of mind when you decided to write the story of Zico?
The state of mind is quite a funny story as such, because there was no dream, there was no aspirations to write a book for me. I was happy, you know, like we were speaking about earlier, I wrote for Sabotage Times and a few other websites, just in a wee bit of freelancing, and just whoever wanted, you know, pieces. And it was through that, one of the websites I worked for, that I wrote pieces for, they were setting up their own publishers. And you said, look, obviously you've submitted a lot of consistent stuff to us over the past few years. How about a book? Because we're going to be looking to get a wee portfolio together. I was like, you know what, I'll do it for a favour then, because I just couldn't, the time that consumes you writing a book, it just takes over your life, and I didn't want that. But I went ahead and done it. The reason I chose the subject, I chose just a random thing. I'd been watching Quadrophenia, and the way that Jimmy just falls in love with the subculture that he's in, and then how it can turn sour. I like that story because it's no showing you all the glamorous part. Exactly what I do in that. I mean, I think Zico gets his arse put in his arse more times than he puts somebody else on their arse. Same with drugs. It's like I show you the both sides. It's So I thought, like, a maybe a wee bit more updated version of, I mean, it's not quite an updated version of Quadrophenia, but the same ethos about, like, a kid who's just completely seduced by
and
being part of something.
Instead, no, the early 60s, it's 1990, 89, 90.
And it could be argued, but my opinion is the year night, or sort of the decade of the 90s, or specifically 1990, but the decade was the last two sort of subcultures that have come out of Great Britain. Nothing's actually, decades since, nothing's really came. You had the casuals, you had the house music, rave, and I just thought, you know what, it was a good time to live through. If you're a certain age, it's like we lived through the 90s, but we didn't really comment on the 90s. Like always the 60s, and it's like the 90s seems to be switched, like missed out. But yeah, it was probably the last decade that what a really good time, before just life started to just
before the internet. Let's blame the internet.
Yeah, you've got a good point there. You've got a good point, because I'm in a position, I mean, I know a lot of people that used to go raving years ago, just, stopped, put that in the head. I still pick and choose, like I'm saying, go defected and things like that. So I've got the luxury of being out back then, and then being out like now, and I see just completely how different it is, And the internet is social media. Social media.
The internet is good for some stuff. Because obviously you're watching this on the internet.
Yeah, and you can buy my book on the internet.
And you can buy this book on the internet as well. The internet is good for some things.
But you're right, because back in those days, there was a bit more an innocent time. You didn't need to be putting on your act for your picture going on social media. If you had to make a wee arse of yourself in the pub, nobody's filming you, and then it's like, so that's why I attempted that. I just thought, you know what, maybe flip it. Like, I'll introduce some of my own real life experiences, because there's nothing better writing a book than there's nothing better than real life. Some of the stories that your mates or has happened to you are way better than anybody could come up with fiction. It's just, and so as a result, like the Quadrophenia, how it kind of turned sour for Jimmy. I've done it but with a different spin and acid, and it didn't really have to turn sour, but ecstasy, acid house has come along, and this is what happened to a lot of casuals. They run slap bang into this, and there's suddenly, the thought of you being in a big area with Hibs casuals and Aberdeen casuals, and there'll be any, sociable and socialise and having it would obviously end in fights, but then we come to this period, and it's not as simple as that. You hear stories about, what Millwall's like. This was first hand for a Millwall guy that I know, talking about, I think they went to Birmingham one day, and I think Birmingham, Millwall, that's quite a category for a good, and they're gone there for fighting, but basically Millwall boys were going to Birmingham, instructing everybody, no trouble, just watch the game, because they want to get back to London to get out. To go out and have a couple of pills and just go out and to like Shoom or wherever it was. So it shows you kind of change the attitude some people. And this is what that's, because it provides a conflict. Guy takes his first pill, experiences his first illegal rave, and then suddenly it's like, why am you running about batting people here? It's just me, just like being a bit daft here with this. And you've also got the girlfriend that's basically saying he's a casual, but he's actually hid it from her. Then he comes back with his a few too many faces with bruises and cuts and that, and then has to. So it's like the.
So it's obviously it's a working class story, just the same as Quadrophenia's a working class story. How's it been received in what is usually seen as a middle class literary world? Or has it no touched that?
It's probably you know what, maybe fortunately or maybe no. I've never seen a review. Well, I've not seen a bad review, put it that way. But I mean, let's be honest. Your book can't appeal to everybody, so you should expect bad reviews. And that makes me think that it's maybe no touch to people that don't understand it. If somebody who doesn't understand it reads it, I'm not sure what they would make of it. But if you know that type of thing. And biggest compliment I can really get is the people that's read it. There's so many times they say they felt like they were reading about themselves.
Right.
It mirrored who they were back in that. Which is good. Unlock some of your own memories that you maybe forgot about. Just like even just reading about a song, and you might think, I remember that. Some specifically because it's about utility, but the guys who fife. There's a few fife boys that were in the utility, and they've read it, and they're like, "So you just wrote that about me, then, haven't you?" It's just like, well, seems like it, but I didn't know yet.
Aye.
But I proper working class. I mean, as a kid, he's ready to leave high school. Try to get his first serious girlfriend. It's something that I guess a lot of people can relate. And you don't have to have taken ecstasy or being a football casual at all to get that. I think it's
a coming of age story.
Absolutely, it's exactly. And this is all point because it starts at the start of the decade and ends at the end of the decade. It gives you a chance to see how this one guy has grown up from a 16-year-old to a 26-year-old, So it's literally
it's a coming of age story. But what you've also got there is, as you're saying, the subject matter is appealing to guys who maybe didn't usually buy books because they go, I'll buy this because that's what I was into. That's what I done. I kind guys what like that. And what I think the literary world doesn't actually realise, there's a massive. Obviously, there is.
Yeah,
you're a popular writer. There is a massive demand for this sort of literature.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a guy who basically he'll read the next version and he'll like, that's me, and he won't read a book until the next year for the next one coming out. It's just it's just
takes it on holiday.
Yeah, a lot of people just. But I think when you read something, actually you recognise. I mean, the very first page of the book, and I think this is something we've probably all had to do at some point. Is the first page is Ezekiel's come home from Edinburgh and he's bought a really expensive jacket, and he's going to have to tell his parents how much he spent on the jacket, and just like the grief that you get, you're like. I could have got all the things I could have got for the price of that jacket. And it's like something relatable because we've all probably had to do that and just like get grief off our parents because they didn't understand. Obviously, they don't want to wear labels like that. But I absolutely come in age in the sense that you see literally a guy who's at high school loses his virginity in it, just for example. And I think you kind of see the difference. And I specifically done this because he's a kid, he loses his virginity, he goes through a lot, but the 6 years later, 6 years is a long time, and specifically it kicks off in the next chapter, the next book, and he's waking up with a strange girl beside him, because he's a DJ now, and but the whole point is he'd never had sex before, and then 6 years later he's waking up with strange Spanish girls in his bed.
It's a great thing that you've managed to make. You're a full-time author. This is what you do. So you've got the Ezekiel trilogy. You've also got two other books, Muirhouse and you'll need to say the Spanish.
El Corazon Valiente,
which is Spanish for Braveheart. I believe.
Aye.
So El Corazon Valiente is
Corazon's Zico's dad.
Zico's dad. So it's an origin story.
Aye.
But you don't need to, if you want to buy that book, you didn't need to read the Zico story first.
I think you would possibly, if you bought that first, you then would want to read them because you're going to be, you already know that it only touches on things that, because how I've done it in the book, you know, I'm not doing spoilers for anybody, but something happens to him at the end of Naughty. And this is how I've picked up the new book, but then I go right back in time to how he got started, and it will make people think twice about the trilogy, because I'm sure they just think he's just the bad guy, which he is, but you can find out why, you know, you find out why somebody becomes a bad guy, and it's not often, so it's not often sort of their fault as such.
No, definitely isn't. Definitely isn't. How can people buy your books, Johnny? Because I ken you're an independent publisher.
I mean, preferably always just
direct.
Go through the website. I don't know if the camera would pick up because it's really small, but it's got the website there, Pan and Arrow. Or through my socials, my Instagram, my Twitter. But at the end of the day, you know what, I appreciate anybody buying a book from wherever, if it's Waterstones, if it's Amazon, but it does make you cry when you see what Amazon take from what you put so much hard work into.
So your own publishing company is like Pan and Arrow publishing.co.uk. You can get, Johnny's actually written 5 books, so you can get them there. You've got a 6th one coming out for Christmas as well.
I'm going to
Lockdown been good to you for writing?
Aye, it's just like, you know, we always said like Tarantino had a plan, he knew exactly which films. I'm not that far away from that. I've already know up to 10 books. I mean, the fact I've written 6 books just blows my mind. You know, it all hinged on that. If nobody read that, then that was it.
The other 9 are not going to happen.
Never going to happen. I'm the type of person, I'm probably not like, because I didn't want to write it in the first place, so I didn't have that motivation. So I guess it would have been like, nobody reads that. I'm like, well, what's the point of writing another 2? To round up the decade? There has to be demand, and there was demand, like, luckily enough, and that's what led to it. I mean, the second 2 were always just on the back burner. We need to see how the first one goes, and I got enough positivities to say, right, let's get cracking. But I knew, like, when I was writing that, I knew how those ones were sort of loosely going to go, but I like Muirhouse though, because it was a complete departure. There's no drugs, there's no casuals. It's just working class people trying to get by.
So that was your 4th book?
Fourth book, aye. It's based on, it was a Twitter conversation that just got out of hand one night. I got told about the legendary Muirhouse Violet Sunday League team. Like, is it the Mean Machine? Like that film, Mean Machine? It pretty much seems like they were something like that. They were actually meant to be really good footballers as well, but really scary at the same time. And I was getting told these stories about guys getting sent off and going and getting their car and trying to run the referee over, goalies getting stabbed and things. You know, it was just, I thought, you know what, I could base a book around this. And it basically half and half, half's to do with the team, half's the main character's day-to-day life. Where I think I educated a few people in the art of stringing a bandit, which was based on, no based on me doing it obviously, but it's based on someone I know who did that for a living. You know, so I knew about the stringing. It was just like, he couldn't drive, he would pay you, he would offer you half his takings if you drove him, but you had to scout out places. It's like you get your legs broken if you go into the wrong places and do it.
Definitely.
So this guy, like in my book, he scouts at all the places for you to go, and we're fine. String the bandits.
Here at a State of Mind Media, we always want to promote independent publishers and independent artists, and Johnny, you actually tick so many boxes. It's been an utter pleasure to have you as my first guest on Screamacelica. Johnny Proctor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that.